Hi, I'm Mary Claire Engel, Assistant Director of School-Based Learning within the Division of Learning and Interpretation at the Cincinnati Art Museum. I am here today with Brian Sholis, Curator of Photography here at the Cincinnati Art Museum, and Rahima Barber, Director of the Tarbell Art Center at Eastern Illinois University. And today we are going to be talking about an upcoming exhibition that will be opening this week at the Cincinnati Art Museum called 30 Americans. I will have Rehema and Brian share with you a little bit about the exhibition, and then I'll share information on how you can connect this exhibition, the artists, and their artwork with your curricula in your classroom. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, this is Brian Sholis. 30 Americans is an exciting exhibition of African American contemporary art in all media. It is drawn primarily from the Rubel family collection, an enormous private collection of contemporary art that has been built over the past 5 decades and is currently housed in Miami, Florida. The Rubels converted a former DEA warehouse into a storage and gallery space back in 1993. So imagine where all the bad things they picked up on episodes of Miami Vice were deposited. That's kind of what they bought and turned into a fully fledged private museum. They have regular changing exhibitions, education programming, and other trappings that you'd find at a typical nonprofit museum. They are publicly minded collectors. This exhibition has toured extensively, in part because of the enthusiasm of curators at public institutions. It has been seen previously at the institutions you see here on the screen, and was most recently presented last autumn at the Detroit Institute of Arts in our state to the north. We're excited to be bringing it to Cincinnati, and one thing that we were able to do, and that each institution does, is to select pieces from a very large collection for display in each individual museum. There are 300 artworks, approximately, by these 30 African American artists, and we've selected about 60 that will be presented in the galleries at the Cincinnati Art Museum. Here are some of the artists. At the time that the exhibition was first presented, all 30 of them were still living. Since then, a few have passed away, but it still is a kind of important record of what has been going on in African American art in the past, let's say, 3 decades, maybe 4 decades, back into the 1970s. You'll see work in all media: paintings, sculpture, photography, video, installation pieces, and it spreads out throughout the museum. There are not only artworks in the 2 largest temporary exhibition galleries, but also near the lobby, another gallery on the first floor. It's an exhibition that has connections to other artworks in the Art Museum's collection, and we tried to emphasize that by placing the exhibition in many different spaces throughout the museum. I'm going to speak briefly about 4 artworks, and then Rahima Barber will speak about 4 others before Mary Claire comes back to talk with you about curriculum and other ways to connect what you're seeing here and what your students will see in the galleries to the lesson plans that you have in your various schools. This piece by the artist Glenn Ligon is one of the first that you'll see in the main galleries of the exhibition. It is as simple, I guess, as it looks, but also can be understood to be fairly profound. Glenn Ligon has been an active artist and exhibiting regularly for more than 2 decades, and almost all of his work entails some engagement with text, whether that's literature, such as Zora Neale Hurston or Ralph Ellison, or the kinds of texts that you see in public demonstrations on signs and things like that. And about 7 or 8 years ago, he began making pieces out of neon. But what's unique about this piece, not only does it say America, but it's a white neon sign that has been covered over in black paint. The lines, the word is picked out in blackness and thrown into contrast against the wall by a kind of the glowing white that is behind the paint. I'll leave it at that. America is a very broad-minded, broad term, and I'm sure that there'll be many different ways to interpret the way that the light has been covered over or forced to shine in a very specific way. This is a piece by an artist named Kara Walker, who is a certified genius in the sense that she won a MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant back in the 1990s for her artworks that engage with 19th century visual art styles, in particular the cut paper silhouette. Cut paper silhouette was a very popular form of art in the late 19th century. It was kind of a Victorian leisure pursuit. And she has taken that and paired it with other forms of 19th century information. In this case, kind of historical references to sexuality, to violence, and to other aspects of African American life that occurred during the era of slavery and just after. This is a 55-foot long piece that spreads across 3 walls in the gallery, and if you look closely, there are some content with mature themes. At the left here on the screen in front of you, you can see that one of the figures seems to be riding on the back of another, or maybe a man on top of a woman. He has a riding crop in his hand and is holding a carrot in front of her as a kind of enticement to kind of run forward. Elsewhere, there are more sexual scenes or scenes involving children, or a kind of a dramatic mishmash of commentary on the challenges and difficulties of 19th century American life for African Americans. Here are 4 photographs that have been altered by the artist Carrie Mae Weems, who works primarily as a photographer and also as a video maker. The photographs themselves, the original material, may be familiar to you, especially if you took American history classes or teach American history yourself. They were taken in 1850 by a photographer in South Carolina at the request of a very famous Harvard scientist who wanted these photographs to kind of prove his bigoted racial theories. He was hoping that images of these black people, of these slaves, would somehow show that indeed black people and white people came from different stock, and therefore to kind of justify theories that treated African Americans as a separate class, as a separate caste, as a separate people. She has tinted these images, which were originally black and white, as were all 19th century photographs, a kind of blood red, and then in the frame itself sort of sandblasted or etched some text onto the glass so that you can read phrases like, "You became a scientific profile, an anthropological debate, a Negroid type, and a photographic subject." She's calling out the fact that this scientist, Louis Agassiz, was essentially dehumanizing these people and letting them represent a race or stand in for a type or prove his theory, rather than embracing their humanity as we hope that the best photographic portraits would do. By doing this, she, in some way, we would like to think that she reinscribes these photographic subjects just a little bit of their humanity, a little bit of their individualness, and calls out the fact that Agassiz, by commissioning these photographs, was in some sense trying to dehumanize them. This painting by the artist Kehinde Wiley is perhaps one of the most dramatic presentations in the museum. You'll see it just off the lobby when you come into the building, and the image on screen does no justice to this very, very enormous work. It's 25 feet long and 12 and a half feet tall. Kehinde Wiley has been exhibiting around the world for the last 15 years, I would say, and has gained a lot of attention for his technique of taking black subjects, oftentimes black male subjects, off the street, people he'll meet in Harlem or anywhere actually he travels in the world. He invites them to his studio where together they look through art history books, paintings by Renaissance masters, the kind of canon of art history. And when they together select an image that they like, Wiley then repaints the scene, making small, subtle changes, and then one dramatic change, which is to insert the figure of the person that he is collaborating with. As many of you know from walking through museum galleries here in Cincinnati and elsewhere, Renaissance paintings have a dearth of African figures, or if they are depicted at all, it is in some kind of subservient position. So by inserting these black bodies into the roles that are typically held by kings or popes or nobility in Renaissance paintings, he's sort of elevating them to the place that they were denied in centuries past. it really is a dramatic presentation, and we feel confident that your students will respond to not only the subject matter, but also the great beauty and the detail of this enormous canvas. I believe that's my 4 paintings, or my 4 artworks, and I'm going to pass this on to Rahima Barber, who will speak about 4 more.
Hello everyone, this is Rahima Barber, and while the work that Brian has just talked about, a lot of it has been representational, there are a lot of objects also in the show that are abstract, and this work we're looking at right now is by Jean-Michel Basquiat, who has been considered one of the most important artists of the 20th century. And this particular painting is perhaps an homage to jazz saxophonist Charlie Parker, whom Basquiat admired quite a bit. And so in this particular piece, Basquiat seems to capture the essence of music of Charlie Parker, whom Stanley Crouch, who is a noted historian, has stated in a recent biography about the musician, he aspired to notes that came out of the horn quicker, that were blunt as snapping fingers when the inspiration demanded. Though often sweet, it could almost sound almost devoid of pity. So we see sort of scribbles, furious scribbles, and really deliberate marks, and we see a bird at the center of the image, and definitely see an energy that recalls jazz music. And perhaps this particular piece, Basquiat may have found some kinship in Parker's life because Parker himself struggled with drug addiction, as did Basquiat. So this work is another work that's somewhat representational but also has some abstract elements to it by Gacy Mutu. Gacy Mutu collects images from beauty and fashion magazines and other materials, and is inspired to create works that depict the Black female body, something that she does not see represented within those particular sources. So her women sort of become these amalgams that transcend cultural, social, gender, and racial hierarchies. These bodies are split, chopped, and woven together from very different sources, and they appear somewhat cyborgian. This particular piece is titled after the French songstress Edith Piaf's popular song, which was recorded and dedicated to the French Foreign Legion during the Algerian Wars. And so we must sort of wonder here if the work not only comments about the bloody, violent, and brutal relationship between colonialism and the continent of Africa, just as much as it possibly represents the emotional aftermath of a failed love affair. We'll go to the next one here. Here, this work, Clan Gate by Gary Simmons, juxtaposes history with whimsy. In Clan Gate, this is one of the larger installation-based works featured in 30 Americans. The artist conflates a long-forgotten history against the quaintness of iconic Americana collectibles. Using wrought iron gates framed by 2 high brick columns which serve as towering pedestals for 2 gnome-like figures, close examination reveals that these statues are actually apparelled in what appears to be Ku Klux Klan robes and hoods. So here Simmons recalls a time of terror and intimidation while also alluding to their activities possibly being a leisurely pastime. They're positioned like lawn jockey lamppost. Simmons reimagines these American caricatures of blackness. And perhaps the artist questions the prevailing interest in collecting these benevolent and historical representations of blackness as well. The next image, this one is by Hank Willis Thomas, who is a New York-based artist that has been working with how brands have positioned Black culture in America. The works in the branded series look at Nike and other popular brands like Timberland and their use of Black male athletes and their bodies to question whether these brands are helping or hindering the construction of Black masculinity. In Branded Head, the deliberately cropped image of a shorn and branded Black man's head, combined with Thomas's removal of the ads text, which is, of course, just do it, reveals an unexpected result. By not including the distinguishing features, the body becomes more object than human figure, and the Nike swoosh is no longer a product logo but a scar. The context is no longer about the power of Nike and the ultimate athleticism affiliated with the brand, but also recalls the practice of physically branding slaves. And so in this work, Thomas demonstrates how marketing, content, and context can also become cultural signifiers. So I think that this is the end of our sort of explanation of the images and that we had in here, and so we'll turn this back over to Mary Claire.
Thank you so much, Rehema and Brian. That was very helpful. Now I just want to give you guys a brief overview of the National Core Art Standards. I haven't listed all of them here. I've just listed a few of the different key points of the standards that I feel can really connect with the exhibition and that you'll be able to utilize in your classroom. These core art standards were released in 2014. They are not required by states to be utilized in the classroom, but they are supplemental. They are helpful. Whether you are an art teacher, whether you teach any other discipline, they are a helpful, useful way to bring creativity and the arts into your classroom in a more thorough way. These art standards are for kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm not going to go grade by grade in these art standards today. I'm just going to go over the four main categories, which are creating, presenting, responding, and connecting. And then I'm going to go over a couple anchor standards that connect well with the exhibition. Our first one here is creating. So creating is conceiving and developing new artistic ideas and work. So one of the anchor standards I have here is to generate and conceptualize artistic ideas and work. And then I've listed two enduring understandings that connect with that anchor standard. The other anchor standard that connects well with this exhibition is anchor standard number 2, which is organize and develop artistic ideas and work. The next category, presenting, is interpreting and sharing artistic work. So sharing that with your classroom, but then also encouraging your students to create work or interpret works of art and share with one another. So perhaps you could take the 8 works of art we looked at today and have your students break up into groups and then have a dialogue about each of the works of art and then share with the entire classroom about their interpretation of those works of art. So the anchor standards that I've listed here are anchor standard 4, select, analyze, and interpret artistic work for presentation. And then anchor standard number 5, develop and refine artistic techniques and work for presentation. Our next one is responding, so understanding and evaluating how the arts convey meaning. Okay, so really having your students look at these works of art, interpret the works of art, and perhaps do research on the works of art or the artists that created them to gather better understanding about what they are trying to convey conceptually in each piece. The anchor standards here are anchor standard 7, perceive and analyze artistic work, and then anchor standard number 8, interpret intent and meaning of artistic work. And then the last one is connecting, so relating artistic ideas and work with personal meaning and external context. So connecting these works of art to their own lived experiences or their own identities, and comparing and contrasting. So having your students really identify and connect. So anchor standard number 10 is synthesize and relate knowledge and personal experiences to make art. And anchor standard number 11, relate artistic ideas and works with societal, cultural, and historical context to deepen that understanding. Well, that's about all we have for you today. I hope you found this helpful. We do have additional resources for you that give information about this exhibition, and then we have 3 articles here that connect to three of the specific artists that that Brian and Rehema talked about today. And thank you very much.